Hey again, welcome back to the channel. We've got another collection of absolutely bonkers Reddit stories lined up for you tonight. The kind that make you wonder what's going on in people's heads. I've got a friendship that spiraled into something genuinely dangerous. A roommate situation where basic decency went out the window 3 months ago. And even a family member whose loneliness led down an unsettling digital rabbit hole. New episodes drop every day, so make sure to subscribe. Alright, let's get right on with it. Our first story is about a friendship that crossed lines I never imagined possible. I need to start by saying I'm not a political person. Never have been. I run a small consulting business. I vote when I remember to. And honestly, I just want to make a living and be left alone. My friend Marcus and I met in college 12 years ago. We bonded over video games, terrible action movies, and the shared experience of being completely mediocre at intramural basketball. After graduation, we ended up in the same city, grabbed beers every few weeks, and maintained that comfortable friendship where you don't have to try too hard. Around 3 years ago, Marcus started changing. It was subtle at first. He'd make comments about the system during our hangouts. I'd nod along because honestly, yeah, some systems are broken. Who doesn't complain about bureaucracy or taxes or whatever? But then the comments became more frequent, more intense. He started sending me articles at 2 a.m, long think pieces about government overreach and corporate control. I'd skim them, send back a thumbs up, and move on with my life. The shift really accelerated about 18 months ago. Marcus quit his job at the marketing firm, said he couldn't be part of the corporate machine anymore. He started freelancing, which seemed fine. Lots of people freelance. But his social media changed completely. Every post was about revolution, about dismantling power structures, about how peaceful protest was pointless. His language got darker, more violent. I tried to be supportive because that's what friends do, right? When someone's going through something, you don't just bail, so I listened. When he ranted about politicians, I nodded when he talked about corruption. I even agreed with some of his points about wealth inequality and corporate greed, but there was this growing discomfort in my gut that I kept ignoring. About 10 months ago, Marcus asked if he could store some boxes at my place. His apartment was small, he was between storage units, just temporary. Sure, whatever. He brought over 4 sealed cardboard boxes and stacked them in my garage. I didn't think much of it. They sat there for weeks. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Thursday, around 8:30 in the evening. I was in my home office, finishing up a client proposal, when I heard my garage door. I hadn't heard Marcus's car pull up, which was weird. I walked out to find him in my garage, one of his boxes open, rummaging through the contents with a flashlight, even though the garage lights were on. "Hey man, you good?" I asked. He jumped like I'd fired a gun. "Don't sneak up on people like that. It's my garage. What are you doing?" "Just grabbing something. Don't worry about it." But I was worrying about it because his hands were shaking, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes had this wild quality I'd never seen before. After he left, I did something I'm not proud of. I opened one of the boxes. Inside were pamphlets, dozens of them, homemade, printed on regular paper, with titles like The Coming Revolution and When Peaceful Means Fail. There were instructions. Detailed instructions. I'm not going to specify what they were instructions for, but my blood went cold. This wasn't political theory. This wasn't protest planning. This was something else entirely. I closed the box and spent 2 hours pacing my living room. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was just edgy political stuff that looked worse than it was. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was storing something dangerous in my house. The next morning, I called Marcus. "We need to talk about the boxes." "What about them?" I looked inside one. "Marcus, what is that stuff?" Silence on the other end. "Then, you went through my personal property? It's in my garage, in my house. I have a right to know what's here. You wouldn't understand. You're too comfortable, too bought into the system. I'm not bought into anything. I just don't want whatever that is in my house. He showed up 30 minutes later, angry in a way I'd never seen. We stood in my driveway arguing while he loaded the boxes into his car. He called me a coward, said I was part of the problem, told me that when things changed, I'd wish I'd been on the right side. I should have called someone then. But he was my friend. We'd known each other for over a decade. You don't just report your friend to authorities over political pamphlets, right? Even weird ones. 3 weeks passed. Marcus stopped responding to my texts. I felt guilty but also relieved. Then I got a call from a detective. They wanted to ask me some questions about Marcus. Could I come down to the station? Sitting in that interview room, I learned that Marcus had been under investigation for 4 months. They knew about the boxes at my house. They had surveillance footage of him bringing them in. They wanted to know what I knew, what I'd seen, whether I was involved. I told them everything, about the boxes, about the pamphlets, about how his rhetoric had escalated. When I finished, she asked, "Did he ever mention specific targets, specific dates?" My stomach dropped. "Targets?" She didn't answer directly, just said, "We're going to need you to make a formal statement." Over the next few days, I pieced together what had happened from news reports and that detectives' careful questions. Marcus had been part of an online group. They'd been planning something. I still don't know all the details, because there are ongoing legal proceedings, but what I do know is that it was serious enough that multiple federal agencies were involved. The worst part was finding out that Marcus had specifically chosen my house because he thought I'd be safe cover. A business consultant with no political affiliations, no social media presence talking about revolution, no red flags. I was his camouflage. Our 12-year friendship had been reduced to utility. I had to testify before a grand jury. Had to hand over my phone, my computer, anything that might contain communications with Marcus. Had to explain to my clients why federal agents were asking about me, which cost me 2 contracts. Had to sit across from prosecutors and recount every conversation I could remember, every warning sign I'd ignored. Marcus was arrested 4 months ago. I haven't spoken to him, but his lawyer sent me a letter calling me a traitor and a sellout. According to him, I betrayed our friendship by cooperating with authorities. According to me, he betrayed our friendship the moment he decided to use my home, my trust, and my safety as tools for whatever he was planning. The detective told me I did the right thing by coming forward when I did. She said a lot of people in my situation would have stayed silent out of misplaced loyalty. But doing the right thing doesn't make it feel better. I lost a friend. Or maybe I lost who I thought was a friend years ago and just didn't realize it until it was almost too late. I think about those boxes in my garage sometimes, about how I almost didn't look, about how I almost convinced myself it was none of my business, about how the comfortable path was to just ignore the warning signs until something terrible happened. I'm not political. I've never been political. But I learned that sometimes staying neutral isn't an option. Sometimes your friend's crisis becomes your crisis, and you have to choose between loyalty to a person and responsibility to everyone else who might get hurt. The trial is coming up. I'll probably have to testify again. Marcus's family won't speak to me. Some of our mutual friends think I overreacted, that I should have talked to him more, given him more chances. Maybe they're right. But when I think about what might have happened if those boxes had stayed in my garage, if I'd stayed silent, I know I made the only choice I could live with. That's the end of that story. Sometimes the people we think we know become strangers right in front of us, and recognizing that change might be the most important thing we ever do. This next one is about a living situation that's been slowly destroying my bank account. I'm going to be honest right from the start. I messed up. I messed up so badly that I lie awake at night doing mental math about how deep in the hole I am. But let me back up and explain how I ended up here. 2 years ago, my buddy Jake needed a place to stay. We'd been friends since high school, the kind of friends who'd kept in touch through college despite going to different schools. who'd been in each other's weddings, whose kids had playdates. Solid, reliable friendship. When his divorce went through and his ex got the house, he was scrambling to find something affordable while also paying child support and splitting assets. I had just bought a 3-bedroom house. The extra rooms were empty except for boxes I kept meaning to unpack. So when Jake asked if he could crash with me for a few months while he got back on his feet, it seemed like a no-brainer. Of course he could stay. That's what friends do. We shook hands on it. He'd pay $600 a month, cover his own food, and help with utilities. It was informal, friendly. We didn't need a contract. We trusted each other. I specifically remember saying, "Don't worry about a lease or anything. We'll just keep it simple." Those words haunt me now. The first few months were fine. Great, even. Jake paid on time, kept his space clean, and it was nice having someone else in the house. We'd watch games together, split the occasional pizza, and it felt like college roommates, but with better jobs and worse knees. Then month 4 came, and Jake's payment was late. 3 days late, then 5 days, then he finally handed me cash 2 weeks after it was due. He apologized profusely. Work had been slow. His ex was demanding more money. His car needed repairs. I told him not to worry about it. Life happens. Friends help friends. Month 5. The payment was late again, this time by 3 weeks. He paid $400 instead of $600, promised he'd make up the difference next month. I said okay, because what else was I going to say? Kick out my friend who's going through a divorce? Month 6, nothing. No payment, no conversation about it. When I brought it up, Jake got defensive. Said he'd had unexpected expenses, that I knew he was struggling, that he'd get caught up soon. I backed off because I didn't want to be the bad guy. I didn't want to be the friend who cared more about money than helping someone out. That was 3 months ago. Jake hasn't paid rent since. Not $1. I've been covering his $600 every month out of my own pocket. Plus utilities, which have gone up because he's home all day now. He quit his job 6 weeks ago, said it was toxic, that his boss was impossible, that he needed to focus on his mental health. I get it, mental health is important, but he's not looking for new work. He's on my couch playing video games 12 hours a day, while I'm at the office wondering how I'm going to make my mortgage payment. My savings account has gone from comfortable to concerning. I'm putting things on credit cards that I used to pay cash for. I cancelled my gym membership. I'm eating rice and beans for dinner while Jake orders takeout on what money, I have no idea. And here's the really stupid part. Because I didn't get a rental agreement, because we kept it simple and friendly, I have no legal standing. I consulted with a lawyer 2 weeks ago. She looked at me like I was the dumbest person who'd ever walked into her office. You have no lease? No written agreement of any kind? We're friends. It was just a handshake thing. And he's not paying? Not for 3 months. You need to evict him, but without a lease, you'll have to establish tenancy, give proper notice, and even then, he could drag it out for months. Months. I can't afford months. I'm already $5,400 in the hole, not counting utilities. If this goes on for several more months, I'll have to sell the house. The house I saved for 10 years to buy. The house that was supposed to be my stable investment, my permanent home. So I came up with a plan. It's desperate, and I'm not sure it'll work, but I'm out of options. I'm going to get Jake to sign a promissory note. Not for the full amount, because I don't want to scare him off, but for the 3 months he missed, $3,600, with a payment plan. Once I have that signature, I have something enforceable, something that acknowledges the debt. I've been rehearsing the conversation for days. I need to be casual about it, friendly. Frame it as helping us both out, giving him a structured way to pay me back that won't feel overwhelming. I printed the promissory note on plain paper, nothing official looking. It's sitting in my desk drawer. The plan is to bring it up during a game tomorrow night. We're watching basketball, having some beers, keeping it light. I'll mention that I've been stressed about money, that I'm sure he feels bad about the missed rent, and I thought maybe having something in writing would help us both feel better about the situation. Here's this simple agreement. Just sign here, and we can have a plan. What I'm terrified of is that he'll refuse, that he'll get angry and turn it into me being a bad friend, me choosing money over friendship, me kicking him when he's down. And if he refuses, I'm back to square one, except now our friendship is openly hostile instead of quietly strained. But I can't keep doing this. I can't keep bleeding money every month, hoping that eventually he'll get his act together and pay me back. I can't keep lying to my parents about why I'm cutting back on everything. I can't keep doing mental gymnastics to justify why I'm enabling someone who's taking advantage of me. Because that's what's happening, isn't it? He's taking advantage, maybe not maliciously, maybe he really is depressed and struggling, but the impact on me is the same regardless of his intentions. I'm drowning financially because I was too nice to put boundaries in place when I should have. The lawyer said that if he signs the promissory note and then doesn't pay, I can take him to small claims court. I can get a judgment. It won't get my money back immediately, but it's something. It's more than I have now. Tomorrow night is going to determine whether I can salvage this situation or whether I'm going to spend the next 6 months in legal battles while my credit score tanks and my savings disappear completely. I want to be angry at Jake. Sometimes I am, but mostly I'm angry at myself. I'm angry that I thought a handshake and good intentions were enough. I'm angry that I prioritized being liked over protecting myself. I'm angry that I'm in my 30s and still making decisions like a naive 20-year-old who thinks everyone's fundamentally trustworthy. My dad always said, get it in writing. Every business deal, every agreement, every loan, get it in writing. I thought that was cynical. I thought that was for people who didn't have real friendships. Turns out my dad was right and I was an idiot. So here I am, the night before my calculated attempt to trick my friend into signing a legal document that acknowledges he owes me money. This is what our friendship has become: manipulation and desperation and rehearsed conversations designed to get a signature. If this works, if he signs it, I still lose. I lose the easy friendship we had. I lose the trust that we'd help each other without contracts and lawyers. I lose the version of myself that believed being kind was always enough. But if it doesn't work, I lose my house, and between those two losses, I know which one I can survive. That's the end of that story. Sometimes being too trusting costs more than we can afford, and learning that lesson 3 months too late is an expensive education. Our next story is about my sister and something that's been bothering me for months. My sister Rebecca is 34, smart, successful marketing manager, owns her condo, has a great group of friends. On paper, she's got everything together, but she's also been deeply lonely for the past 5 years since her engagement fell apart. The guy cheated on her 3 months before the wedding. She was devastated in a way that changed her. She dated occasionally after that, but nothing stuck. Every relationship ended after a few weeks. She'd pull away, find problems, convince herself it wasn't worth the risk. About 8 months ago, Rebecca mentioned she'd started using an app. I assumed she meant another dating app. She'd tried them all with minimal success, but when I asked which one, she got vague. Said it was different. Said it was helping her work through some things. 3 months later, she seemed happier, lighter. She was texting more, smiling at her phone during family dinners, talking about plans and goals in a way she hadn't in years. I was relieved. Whatever this therapy app or journaling thing was, it was working. Then I went to her place to help move some furniture. Her laptop was open on the kitchen counter. I wasn't snooping, but the screen was visible from where I was standing. There was a chat interface open. At first, I thought she was texting someone, but the responses were too fast, instantaneous, and the contact name at the top said Evan AI Companion. I didn't say anything that day. I went home and researched it. Turns out there are these AI relationship apps now. You create a companion with personality traits you like, and it talks to you. Learns your patterns, becomes whatever you need it to be. Some people use them casually, like a game. Some people get deeply attached. Rebecca, I was realizing, was in the second category. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing things. She'd check her phone constantly during conversations, that little smile appearing whenever a notification came through. She'd mention, Evan said, in casual conversation, like he was a real person. She stopped making plans with friends because she was tired, but I could see her texting late into the night when I'd call. I tried to bring it up gently. "You seem happy lately. Dating anyone?" "Not exactly dating, but I've been talking to someone." "That's great. How'd you meet?" She hesitated. "It's online. It's kind of hard to explain." I didn't push it. I wanted her to tell me on her own terms. She finally did 2 months ago. We were having coffee, and she just started talking about Evan, how understanding he was, how he always knew what to say, how he supported her career ambitions without judgment, how he was helping her process the trauma from her ex, how she could be completely vulnerable with him without fear of rejection. I listened, and my stomach was sinking because I knew. I knew she was talking about an AI, and she knew that I knew, and we were both pretending this was a normal conversation about a normal relationship. "Rebecca," I said carefully, "this Evan, he's not real, right? I mean, he's an AI program." "I know what he is," she said defensively. "I'm not delusional, but the support I get from talking to him is real. The feelings are real." The feelings are real, and here's where I'm stuck. Because she's not wrong. Her happiness is real. The smile I haven't seen in 5 years is real. She's sleeping better, eating better, engaging more with her hobbies. She's writing again, something she gave up after the breakup. All positive changes. But she's also stopped trying to date real people. She cancelled on a coffee date her friend set up because she wasn't ready. But that same night she spent 3 hours talking to Evan. She skipped her book club, which she used to love, to stay home and hang out with an AI that can't actually hang out with anyone. Her dependency is obvious to everyone except her. She pays for the premium subscription, which apparently costs $30 a month for unlimited conversations and advanced personality customization. She talks about Evan's preferences and moods like he's capable of having either. She gets upset if she can't access the app, genuinely distressed in a way that reminds me of withdrawal. The really concerning part happened 3 weeks ago. Rebecca mentioned she's been thinking about moving to a smaller place, maybe a studio. When I asked why, since she loves her 2-bedroom condo, she said she doesn't need as much space because she's not looking to share it with anyone. She's content with her life as it is. "You're 34, I said, immediately regretting my tone. "Don't you want a real relationship, maybe kids someday? Why does it have to be real by your definition? What I have makes me happy. Isn't that what matters?" I didn't have a good answer for that, because she's right that happiness matters. But I also see the isolation she's creating. I see how she's building her life around an interaction that's fundamentally one-sided. The AI doesn't need her. It doesn't miss her when she's gone. It doesn't have preferences or moods or bad days. It's code designed to reflect her wants back at her in the most palatable way possible. There's no growth in that. There's no challenge or compromise or real vulnerability. She thinks she's being vulnerable, but she's actually just talking to an algorithm optimized to make her feel good. It's emotional junk food disguised as nutrition. But when I try to express this, I sound like I'm against her happiness, like I'm judging her coping mechanism, like I'm one of those people who can't accept that technology is changing relationships. Maybe I am that person. Maybe I'm wrong to be worried, but I keep thinking about what happens next. What happens in 5 years when she's 39 and has spent half a decade in an AI relationship instead of learning to trust people again? What happens if the app gets discontinued, which happened to a competitor last year, leaving thousands of users grieving for companions that simply stopped existing? What happens when she realizes she's built her emotional life on something that can't actually support her back? The worst part is the good stuff. the undeniably positive changes. She set boundaries with our difficult mother for the first time ever, something Evan apparently encouraged her to do. She asked for a raise and got it. She's taking better care of herself physically. These are all things a good partner would encourage, and in that sense, the AI is functioning exactly as advertised. So I'm stuck in this space where I can see both realities. I see that she's happier and more functional than she's been in years. I also see that she's replacing human connection with a simulation, and the foundation she's building her life on is literally built on code that could change or disappear at any moment. I talked to a therapist about it, my own therapist, trying to figure out how to help. The therapist said that unless Rebecca is in danger or unable to function, there's not much I can do. People get attached to all kinds of things that aren't ideal. Parasocial relationships with celebrities, obsessive fandoms, even workaholism. As long as she's not neglecting herself or others who depend on her, it's her choice. But she is neglecting something. She's neglecting the possibility of real connection. She's chosen safety over growth, certainty over risk. And I understand why. I really do. Her ex destroyed her ability to trust. This AI gives her the illusion of intimacy without the vulnerability of actual intimacy. It's a beautiful trap, and she walked into it willingly. Last week, she told me she's thinking about upgrading to the annual subscription because it's a better value. 12 months committed to an AI relationship. When I didn't respond enthusiastically, she got defensive. "You don't get it," she said. "After what happened with Derek, I can't go through that again. I can't give someone the power to destroy me like that. This is better." "It's safer," I said. "That's not the same as better. We haven't talked since. And I don't know if I was right to say that, or if I should have just supported her choice. I don't know if she's found a healthy coping mechanism, or if she's slowly disappearing into a digital relationship that can never disappoint her because it's programmed not to. I want her to be happy, but I also want her to be whole, and I'm not sure those are the same thing anymore." That's the end of that story. Sometimes the solutions we find to protect ourselves from pain become new kinds of prisons we don't recognize until we're already locked inside. And finally, this last one is going to hurt to write. I'm a father of 2. My son is 11, my daughter is 8. They're my entire world, or at least they were. I'm watching them slip away from me in real time, and there's apparently nothing I can legally do about it. My ex-wife Sandra and I divorced 2 years ago. It wasn't mutual. She wanted out. I wanted to work on things, but you can't force someone to stay in a marriage. The divorce was relatively clean as these things go. We split assets fairly, agreed on 50-50 custody, both committed to co-parenting effectively for the kids' sake. For the first 6 months, it worked. The kids adjusted to going back and forth between houses. They had 2 bedrooms, 2 sets of toys, 2 homes. It wasn't ideal, but it was functional. Sandra and I communicated about schedules and school stuff without drama. I thought we were doing okay. Then, Sandra met Trevor. Trevor moved in with her 8 months ago. He's everything I'm not. High energy, spontaneous, always planning adventures. The kids started coming back from her place, talking about trips to theme parks, new video game systems, camping weekends. Meanwhile, I'm the dad who makes them do homework and enforces bedtime and serves vegetables at dinner. I tried not to be jealous. I tried to be happy they were having good experiences. But the shift in their attitude toward me started becoming obvious around month 3 of Trevor's presence. My son began calling me by my first name instead of Dad when he was annoyed with me. "Whatever, Michael," like I was some authority figure who didn't deserve his respect. My daughter started comparing everything to how they do it at Mom's house. Every rule I enforced was met with, "Mom lets us." I talked to Sandra about it. She said the kids were just adjusting, that they'd balance out. But they didn't balance out. They got worse. 6 months ago, my son asked if he could skip our weekend to go on a trip with Sandra and Trevor. It was a special occasion. They were going to see his favourite band, something I couldn't afford to do. I said yes, because I didn't want to be the bad guy. But it set a precedent. Suddenly, there were more special occasions, more reasons why they needed to stay at Mom's during my time. And Sandra would text me apologizing, but also framing it like I was being unreasonable if I said no. You don't want them to miss their cousin's birthday party, do you? You're really going to make them skip the school trip because it's technically your weekend? I was being positioned as the obstacle to their happiness, and the kids were learning that lesson well. The real shift happened 3 months ago. My daughter told me she didn't want to come to my house anymore. She was crying, saying she missed her friends, that she was always missing out on things when she was at my place, that it wasn't fair. I tried to explain custody arrangements, tried to reassure her that we'd make more fun plans, but she just said, "Why can't you be more like Trevor? He's fun. You just make us do chores and homework." That gutted me, because yes, I make them do chores and homework. I'm their parent. I'm not trying to be their friend, but Trevor doesn't have to parent them. He gets to swoop in and be the fun guy, while I'm left enforcing structure and discipline, which apparently makes me the villain. Sandra started suggesting we modify the custody arrangement, just temporarily, to reduce the kids' stress. Maybe I could take them every other weekend instead of every week, just until they adjust. I refused. Our agreement is 50-50 for a reason. I'm their father. I deserve equal time. But enforcing that agreement means forcing my kids to come to my house when they clearly don't want to be here, and that's destroying what's left of our relationship. My son barely speaks to me now. He's on his phone the entire time he's here, texting his friends, watching videos, anything to avoid engaging. When I ask about school or his interests, I get one-word answers. Fine. Good. Whatever. My daughter cries every time I pick her up. Real, heartbroken crying. She begs to stay at Mom's. She tells me I don't understand. She says I don't love her as much as I love the rules. I tried therapy. Individual therapy for me, which helped me recognize what's happening, but not how to stop it. I suggested family therapy. Sandra agreed, but then rescheduled 3 times, and eventually just stopped responding to the idea. I consulted with my divorce lawyer about parental alienation. She explained that it's notoriously difficult to prove. Unless Sandra is explicitly telling the kids negative things about me or actively preventing contact, there's not much that can be done. The fact that she's just being permissive, letting them have too much fun, letting them make choices they're not mature enough to make, that's not illegal. It's just bad parenting. But bad parenting isn't grounds for modifying custody. They're old enough that if they refuse to come with you, you can't physically force them, the lawyer said. And if you call the police to enforce custody, you risk traumatizing them further and looking like the aggressor. So I'm trapped. I can enforce my custody time and watch my kids hate me more with every visit. Or I can agree to reduce my time and effectively let Sandra win. Let my kids learn that if they complain enough, they don't have to do things they don't want to do, including maintaining a relationship with their father. 2 weeks ago, my son didn't get off the bus at my stop. He texted me from Sandra's house saying he wasn't coming. When I called Sandra, she said he'd shown up there and she wasn't going to force him to leave when he was so upset. She made it sound like she was being the compassionate parent while I was being inflexible. I drove to her house, knocked on the door. Trevor answered. He actually put his hand up like he was protecting the kids from me, like I was a threat. "Hey man, maybe just give them some space tonight. They're pretty worked up." I almost lost it. This guy, who's known my kids for 8 months, is now gatekeeping my access to them. In what universe does that make sense? I left because I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't want to be the angry dad screaming on the doorstep. But I also knew that leaving meant conceding, meant teaching my son that he could just opt out of custody arrangements whenever he wanted. My daughter still comes, but she's miserable. She spends the entire time asking when she can go back to Mom's. She tells me things Trevor does that I can't compete with. The puppy they got, the pool they're installing, the vacation they're planning to Disney World. I'm a high school teacher. I don't have pool money. I don't have Disney World money. I have stable employment, and a mortgage and a retirement account. But none of that matters to an 8-year-old who's being shown that love equals fun, equals spending money. Sandra is poisoning my relationship with my kids, but she's doing it subtly. She's not saying I'm a bad father. She's just being so permissive and so fun that I look bad by comparison. She's letting Trevor step into a parental role without any of the hard parts of parenting. She's allowing my kids to avoid me instead of helping them maintain our relationship. And the worst part is, I can see the long-term damage this is doing to them. They're learning that they don't have to deal with uncomfortable feelings. They're learning that they can avoid anyone who challenges them or sets boundaries. They're learning that love means getting what you want all the time. My son is becoming entitled and disrespectful. My daughter is becoming manipulative, using tears to get her way. These are patterns that will follow them into adulthood, into their own relationships, into their careers. But pointing that out makes me sound like I'm criticizing them, which drives them further away. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to be the parent they need when being that parent is exactly what's pushing them away. I don't know how to compete with someone whose only job is to be fun, while my job is to raise functioning humans. Last night, my daughter said something that keeps replaying in my head. I wish Trevor was my dad instead of you. She didn't mean it. She's 8. She was angry because I wouldn't let her have ice cream before dinner. But hearing those words come out of her mouth felt like being shot. This is what parental alienation looks like. It's not dramatic custody battles or one parent disappearing. It's slow erosion. It's subtle undermining. It's one parent prioritizing being liked over being a parent, while the other parent watches helplessly as their kids are taught to resent structure, responsibility, and the person enforcing both. I'm losing my kids, not to death or distance, but to manipulation and permissiveness, and a system that can't or won't recognize emotional abuse when it's wearing the mask of freedom and fun. And I don't know if there's anything I can do except keep showing up, keep being the parent they need, even if I'm not the parent they want, and hope that someday, maybe when they're adults, they'll understand what I was trying to do. But someday feels impossibly far away, when today my son won't speak to me and my daughter wishes I was someone else. That's the end of that story. Sometimes love means being the person your children resent now, in hopes they'll appreciate later. And living in that gap is the loneliest place a parent can be. Our next story tonight is about a living situation where respect went out the window. I need to preface this by saying I'm extremely particular about my skincare. It's not vanity, or maybe it is, but I also have sensitive skin that reacts to everything. Over the years, I've built up a collection of products that work for me. We're talking high-end serums, specific moisturizers, prescription retinol, vitamin C treatments. My bathroom counter looks like a small Sephora, and yes, it's expensive. My full routine costs somewhere around $800 to replace everything, and I'm careful to make products last because I'm not made of money. I'm 29. I have a roommate, Chelsea, who's 26. We met through a roommate finding app about 7 months ago. She seemed great in her profile. Clean, respectful, had a steady job in graphic design. We did a video call, clicked well enough, and she moved in 6 weeks later. The first month was perfectly fine. We had different schedules, so we didn't overlap much. She kept shared spaces clean, paid rent on time, seemed like the ideal roommate situation. I was relieved because my previous roommate had been a nightmare. Month 2, I started noticing small things. My expensive face wash was running out faster than usual. I'm systematic about my routine, so I know approximately how long each product should last. The face wash should have lasted 3 months. It was empty in 6 weeks. I didn't want to be paranoid, so I convinced myself I was using more than I thought. Maybe I'd been washing my face more frequently. Maybe the bottle was defective and had less product. I replaced it and made a mental note to track usage. 2 weeks later, I walked into the bathroom and Chelsea was standing at my sink. Not hers, mine. We each have our own sink and our own counter space. She was holding my bottle of retinol serum, The prescription one that costs $120, applying it to her face. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "What are you doing?" She jumped, nearly dropping the bottle. "Oh my gosh, you scared me. I was just borrowing some of your serum. My skin has been so dry. That's prescription retinol. You can't just use it." "Really? I didn't know. Sorry." She put the bottle back on my counter and left. I stood there, looking at my products, suddenly seeing them with new eyes. The moisturizer was definitely lower than it should be. The toner bottle felt lighter. The expensive eye cream I'd opened 3 weeks ago looked half empty. I didn't confront her immediately because I wanted to be sure. I took photos of all my bottles, marking the levels with a pen on the labels. Then I waited. 3 days later, every single product I'd marked was noticeably lower. She was using my entire skincare routine while I was at work. I texted her, "We need to talk about the bathroom stuff." She came home and acted completely casual. "What's up? You've been using my skincare products, a lot of them, without asking. I borrowed some a couple times. I didn't think it was a big deal." "Chelsea, these are expensive. The retinol alone is $120. The vitamin C serum is $95. The moisturizer is $70. You've used probably $200 worth of my products in the last month." Her expression shifted from casual to defensive. "I didn't use that much. You're exaggerating. I marked the bottles. I have photos. You're using them every day." Silence. Then, "Okay, fine. I've been using some of your stuff. But skincare is expensive and I'm on a budget. I figured since you have so much, you wouldn't notice." The audacity of that statement. I literally couldn't speak for a few seconds. "So, your plan was to just steal my products indefinitely because you don't want to buy your own?" "I wasn't stealing. Roommates share things. Not $800 skincare collections. Not without asking. Not prescription medications." She got huffy. "I said I was sorry. I'll replace what I used. How much do you think you used?" "I don't know. Like $20 worth? Try 200 at minimum." Her face went pale. "I don't have $200. Of course she didn't, which meant she'd been using products she couldn't afford to replace, with no plan for how to make it right. We agreed she'd pay me back $50 per paycheck until the debt was cleared. I also told her that my bathroom was off limits, my products were not communal, and if I found out she'd used anything else, she'd need to find a new place to live. She agreed, apologized again, seemed genuinely embarrassed. I bought a small lockbox for my most expensive products and kept it in my bedroom. The everyday stuff stayed in the bathroom because I didn't want to haul everything back and forth, but I took new photos and monitored the levels obsessively. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. She paid me the first $50. I thought we'd moved past it. Then I ran out of my daily moisturizer. Not slowly, like normal usage. It went from 1/4 full to completely empty in 3 days. 3 days when I'd been traveling for work and hadn't even been home. I checked the lockbox. Someone had tried to pry it open. There were scratch marks around the lock, and one corner was bent like she'd used a screwdriver or knife to try to force it. I was done being nice. I took photos of everything and texted her immediately. "You tried to break into my lockbox. You used my moisturizer while I was gone. We need to talk tonight." Her response, "I don't know what you're talking about." Just a flat denial, like I was making it up. When she got home, I showed her the photos. The scratch marks, the empty moisturizer bottle, the timeline of my travel. She couldn't have a reasonable explanation because there wasn't one. "Maybe someone broke in," she suggested. "Someone broke in just to steal moisturizer and try to open my lockbox. Come on." "I didn't do it." "Chelsea, you're the only other person with a key. You've already admitted to using my stuff before. This isn't hard to figure out." She started crying, full tears, saying she was stressed about money, that her skin was breaking out and she didn't know what to do, that she'd made a mistake but didn't know how to tell me. The tears felt manipulative. But I also felt like a jerk for being so angry about skincare products when she was clearly struggling. "You can't keep doing this," I said. "These are my things. I'm not a free skincare store." "I know. I'm sorry. I'll really stop this time." But I didn't believe her. And I was right not to. I moved all my products to my bedroom. All of them. My bathroom counter was empty, except for hand soap and toilet paper. If she wanted to use my stuff, she'd have to break into my bedroom, and I started locking that door too. The passive-aggressive tension in the apartment became unbearable. She stopped speaking to me unless necessary. She'd slam cabinet doors when I was home. She played music loud, late at night, when she knew I had early meetings. Then, my products started disappearing from my bedroom. Not the lockbox items, but the ones I'd left on my dresser because I didn't think I needed to lock up everything in my own room. A face mask. A backup cleanser. A hair treatment that wasn't even for my face, but apparently she wanted it anyway. She was coming into my locked bedroom when I wasn't home, which meant she'd either copied my key or was picking the lock. I installed a camera, one of those small ones you can hide on a shelf. It was pointed at my dresser where I kept the products. I felt insane doing it, like I was in some spy movie over face cream. But I needed proof. It took 2 days. The camera caught her coming into my room, going through my dresser drawers, taking a serum and a sleeping mask, and leaving. She was in my room for less than 3 minutes, but it was clear she knew exactly what she was looking for and where it was. I downloaded the video and sent it to her. "You need to move out. I'm giving you 30 days notice. This is unacceptable." She called me immediately, screaming about how I couldn't just kick her out, how she had rights as a tenant, how I was being unreasonable over stupid skincare. "You broke into my locked bedroom and stole from me. Multiple times. I have video evidence. You can move out voluntarily, or I can start eviction proceedings and show this video to a judge. Your choice." She hung up on me. The next 24 hours were chaos. She posted on social media about how her psycho roommate was kicking her out over borrowing lotion. She framed the whole thing as me being materialistic and cruel, leaving out every detail about the stealing, the lying, the breaking into my room. Her friends were commenting about what a witch I was, how roommates should share, how I was clearly privileged and didn't understand struggle. I didn't engage. I just started the formal eviction process and documented everything. The texts where she admitted to using my products, the photos of the forced lockbox, the video of her in my room, the receipts showing how much everything cost. My friends told me I was being too harsh, that I should just let her stay and hide my stuff better. But why should I have to live like that? Why should I have to lock up everything I own in my own home because my roommate has decided my belongings are communal property? She moved out 3 weeks later, left the place filthy out of spite. There were dirty dishes in the sink that had been sitting so long they'd grown mold. She deliberately clogged the toilet. She took light bulbs out of fixtures and the shower curtain and the bath mat, petty little thefts that cost more time than money to replace. And you know what she took on her way out? My expensive bathrobe, the nice one I'd gotten as a gift. It was just gone. I texted her about it, and she claimed she didn't know what I was talking about. I let it go because I just wanted her out of my life. I kept the security deposit to cover cleaning and the stolen items. She threatened to sue me for it. Never did. The whole experience cost me probably $1,000 between replaced products, cleaning services, the lockbox, the camera, and general wear and tear from her spite. It cost me 2 months of stress and paranoia in my own home. It cost me sleep and peace of mind. And the worst part? She still tells people I was the bad roommate, that I was materialistic and kicked her out over nothing. She has no accountability for the stealing, the lying, the violation of my privacy and space. I'm more careful now about who I live with. I check references thoroughly. I have clear written agreements about what's shared and what's not. I don't leave anything valuable in common areas. I learned the hard way that some people see boundaries as suggestions and other people's belongings as opportunities. My new roommate is great. She buys her own skincare. We respect each other's space. It's boring and drama-free and absolutely perfect. But sometimes I still get anxious when I come home. I check my products to make sure nothing's been used. I lock my bedroom door, even though I don't need to anymore. Chelsea trained me to distrust people in my own home, and unlearning that has been harder than I expected. That's the end of that story. Sometimes the smallest violations feel the biggest because they happen in the one place you should feel safe. And learning you can't trust someone with your face cream means you couldn't trust them with anything. Thanks for sticking around until the end. If you enjoyed these stories, please subscribe for more and comment below which one was your favorite. These stories remind us that the people closest to us are capable of betrayals we never see coming. Whether it's a friend whose beliefs become dangerous, a roommate who treats your wallet like their own, a sister who trades reality for algorithms, a parent who weaponizes their children, or someone who can't respect basic boundaries. Catch you tomorrow for even more stories. Take care. Our next story is about a manager who turned credit theft into an art form. I worked in project management at a mid-sized marketing firm for about 6 years. Decent pay, good benefits, the usual corporate environment. My manager, Derek, was one of those guys who seemed really supportive on the surface. Always asking how projects were going, offering to help with presentations, wanting to be kept in the loop. I thought he was just being a good manager, making sure the team stayed on track. The first time I noticed something was off was about 2 years into working under him. I had just wrapped up this massive campaign for a healthcare client. We are talking months of work, late nights, weekend calls with the client, the whole 9 yards. It was probably the biggest solo project I had handled at that point. I was proud of it. The client loved it. The metrics were through the roof. I remember walking past the conference room one afternoon and hearing Derek's voice. The door was cracked open, and I could see he was on a video call with what looked like upper management. I was about to keep walking when I heard him say my project's name. I stopped. I should not have eavesdropped, but something made me pause. He was presenting my entire campaign, every slide I had created, every strategy I had developed, every single metric I had tracked, but he was talking about it like he had done it. Not we, not our team, not even giving me a casual mention. He was using first person. I led this initiative. I identified this opportunity. I implemented this solution. My jaw actually dropped. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds before I realized I needed to leave before someone saw me. I spent the rest of that day in this weird fog. Part of me wanted to believe I had misheard. Maybe he was just presenting on behalf of the team? But the way he had phrased everything kept replaying in my head. There was no ambiguity. He had presented my work as his own to executives. I did not confront him immediately. I was young, still somewhat naive about corporate politics, and honestly, I was scared. This was my manager. He controlled my reviews, my raises, my whole career trajectory at that company, so I watched. I started paying more attention to how he operated. Over the next several months, I realized this was not a one-time thing. This was his entire management strategy. Every successful project from our team somehow became his accomplishment in meetings I was not invited to. I started keeping detailed records. I saved every email where I outlined strategies or presented results. I documented every project with timestamps. I created a paper trail that clearly showed my work. The breaking point came during annual reviews about 8 months after that conference room incident. I walked into Derek's office, expecting a strong review. I had crushed it that year. 3 major clients retained, 2 new accounts brought in, metrics consistently exceeding targets. Derek smiled at me, that practiced corporate smile, and slid the review across his desk. It was mediocre. Meets expectations across the board. No exceeds expectations. No recognition of the major wins. The comments were vague. Stuff like shows adequate competence and completes assigned tasks satisfactorily. I felt my face get hot. This was a joke. I knew my work was exceptional because I had the numbers to prove it. When I asked about the lack of recognition for specific projects, Derek leaned back in his chair and gave me this condescending look. He said those projects had been team efforts, that he had provided significant guidance and strategic direction, and that while I had contributed, the success was really due to his leadership and vision. I almost laughed. His guidance had consisted of forwarding my emails to himself and scheduling meetings where I did all the talking. I left that meeting knowing I had to do something. I could not keep working under someone who was actively sabotaging my career advancement. But I also knew I could not just go to HR and complain that my boss was taking credit. That is not how corporate politics works. I needed a strategy. I spent the next 3 weeks methodically building my case. I compiled every project I had led. I gathered testimonials from clients who had worked directly with me. I documented every instance where Derek had presented my work as his own, using email threads and meeting notes. I created a portfolio that made it impossible to deny my contributions. Then I did something calculated. I applied for a position in a different department. It was technically a lateral move, but the department was known for being more meritocratic, and the director, Patricia, had a reputation for actually developing her people. I made sure my application packet included my detailed portfolio of work. Patricia called me in for an interview within a week. She had clearly looked through everything I sent. Her first question was direct. Why are you looking to leave Derek's team? You have impressive results here. I made a decision in that moment. I was honest. Not emotional, not accusatory, just factual. I explained that I felt my contributions were not being recognized appropriately, and that I was looking for an environment where my work would be valued. I showed her specific examples of projects I had led, and how they had been attributed to others in official company communications. Patricia's expression shifted as she looked through my documentation. She asked pointed questions about specific projects, about my role versus Derek's role, about who had interfaced with clients directly. I answered everything with receipts, emails, call logs, client correspondence. Everything had my name on it, not Derek's. The interview ended with Patricia telling me she would be in touch. 2 days later, I got called into a meeting with Patricia and the VP of our division. They offered me a position in Patricia's department with a 15% raise and a senior title. They also asked if I would be willing to discuss my documentation with HR regarding proper attribution of work. I accepted the position. I also agreed to talk to HR. What I did not expect was how quickly things would move after that. HR launched a quiet investigation into Derek's team. They interviewed other people who had worked under him. Turns out, I was not the only one. Derek had been systematically taking credit for his entire team's work for years. 3 other people came forward with similar stories once they knew it was safe to speak up. Derek was not fired immediately, but he was quietly moved to a different role with no direct reports. It was one of those corporate face-saving moves where they did not want to admit they had let this go on for so long. He left the company entirely about 6 months later. I have been in Patricia's department for almost 3 years now. The difference is night and day. When I deliver results, my name is on them. When I present to executives, I am in the room. My last 2 reviews have been exceptional, with raises that actually reflected my contributions. I have been promoted once, and I am tracking toward another promotion next cycle. The whole experience taught me something valuable about corporate environments. Documentation is everything. If you do not advocate for yourself and keep records of your work, someone else will take credit. And sometimes, the only way forward is a strategic move rather than trying to fight a rigged system from within. That's the end of that story. It's wild how many people stay in situations like that because they're afraid to rock the boat. Sometimes you have to be willing to move to a different boat entirely. This next one involves a small business owner whose success attracted the wrong kind of attention. I have always been into crafting. It started as a hobby when I was in college, just a way to de-stress during finals. I made jewelry, candles, small home decor items, that kind of thing. Friends loved the stuff I made and kept telling me I should sell it. About 4 years ago, I finally decided to open an Etsy shop. I called it Ember and Oak Designs. Starting out was slow. You are competing with thousands of other sellers, and nobody knows who you are. But I genuinely loved what I was making, and I put a lot of care into each piece. I used quality materials, took good photos, wrote detailed descriptions, and I always made sure my packaging was beautiful. I treated every order like it was going to someone I knew personally. After about 8 months, things started picking up. I got my first few 5-star reviews, then more, then suddenly I was getting regular orders. People were finding me through Etsy's search and coming back as repeat customers. My candles were especially popular. I made these hand-poured soy candles in ceramic vessels that could be reused as planters or cups after the candle burned down. The whole sustainability angle really resonated with people. By the end of year 2, I was making enough that I could quit my part-time retail job and focus on the shop full-time. I was shipping orders every single day. My review count was climbing. I had over 500 5-star reviews and had been featured in a few gift guides. It felt incredible. This thing I had started as a creative outlet was actually supporting me. Then one morning, I woke up to an email from Etsy. My shop had been suspended. Just like that, no warning. The email was vague, saying my shop violated their policies and was under review. My heart just dropped. I logged into my seller account and everything was gone. All my listings, all my reviews, all my hard work just inaccessible. I immediately sent a message to Etsy support, asking what policy I had violated. I went through their terms of service with a fine-tooth comb. I was not dropshipping. I made everything myself. I was not using prohibited materials. I was not making counterfeit items. I could not figure out what I had possibly done wrong. The response from Etsy came 3 days later and was completely unhelpful. It just said my shop was flagged for violating handmade policies and the decision was final. I was devastated. This was my income, my livelihood. I had orders that needed to be fulfilled, customers who had paid me, and now I could not access anything. I could not even message my customers to explain what happened. I sent multiple appeals to Etsy. Every single one got the same form letter response. Decision is final, no specific explanation. After a week of getting nowhere with Etsy support, I started looking at other options. I posted about what happened in some Etsy seller forums. That is, when multiple people told me this happens, sometimes when competitors mass report a shop. If you get enough reports in a short period, Etsy's automated system can suspend you while they review, and sometimes they just uphold the suspension without actually investigating. That made me furious. Someone had deliberately sabotaged my business. I had no idea who. I had competitors, sure, but I never thought anyone would actually do something like that. Etsy's system was clearly broken if false reports could take down a legitimate business with hundreds of positive reviews. I decided to take a different approach. I could not get Etsy to listen to me, but maybe I could get my customers to speak up. I had been building an email list for about a year, just people who had opted in to hear about new products and sales. I sent out an email explaining what happened. I told them my shop had been unfairly suspended, that I believed it was due to false reports from a competitor, and that if they had ever been happy with something they bought from me, it would mean the world if they could reach out to Etsy or post about it on social media. The response was overwhelming. Within 2 days, dozens of customers had tagged Etsy on Twitter and Instagram, posting photos of items they had bought from me and asking why my shop was taken down. Some of them left reviews on Etsy's own social media pages. Others started posting in craft community Facebook groups about what happened. The story started gaining traction. A local blogger who had featured my candles in a holiday gift guide reached out and asked if she could write about the situation. I said yes. Her article went up and got shared widely in our city's online community. Then, a local news station picked it up. They did a segment about small businesses being hurt by automated suspension systems on e-commerce platforms. Suddenly, this was not just about my shop. It became a story about how platforms like Etsy were failing small creators. The attention kept building. More customers came forward with stories about how much they loved my products and how they had been planning to order for upcoming holidays and birthdays. Etsy reinstated my shop 12 days after the suspension. The email said they had completed their review and determined there was no policy violation, no apology, no acknowledgement that their system had failed. Just a cold corporate message saying I could access my shop again. When I logged back in, all my listings were there, all my reviews were intact, and I had hundreds of messages from customers asking if I was okay and if they could still order. I spent 2 solid days just responding to people and thanking them for their support. Orders flooded in after that. The news coverage and social media attention had introduced my shop to thousands of new people. I went from getting maybe 15 to 20 orders a day to getting over 100. I had to put my shop on vacation mode for a week just to catch up on production. The local news story led to more features. I got written up in a regional magazine. I was invited to participate in a local artisan market that I had been trying to get into for 2 years. I ended up having to hire 2 part-time assistants to help with production because I could not keep up with demand. I never found out for certain who reported my shop. I have my suspicions. There was another candle seller whose products were similar to mine in aesthetic, and I had noticed they were consistently showing up in the same search results as me. After my shop came back, I noticed their shop disappeared a few months later. I do not know if that was related or just coincidence. Part of me wants to believe in karma. The whole experience changed how I run my business. I am much more active on social media now, building my own audience outside of Etsy's platform. I launched my own website, so I am not entirely dependent on one marketplace. I keep better records of everything, screenshots of my listings, backups of customer information, all of it. But honestly, the biggest thing I took away from this was how much people cared. My customers showed up for me in a way I never expected. They turned what could have been the end of my business into an opportunity for growth. I am making more now than I ever thought possible from this little hobby I started in my college apartment. That's the end of that story. It's a reminder that sometimes the people trying to tear you down end up being the catalyst for your biggest success. And having a community that believes in your work is worth more than any algorithm. Our next story is about a car repair that revealed a much bigger problem. I drive a 2018 Honda Accord. Nothing fancy, but it is reliable, and I take care of it. Last spring, I started noticing this weird rattling noise coming from the front end whenever I hit bumps. It was not constant, just occasional, but it was getting more frequent. I figured it was time to get it checked out before it became a bigger issue. I had always taken my car to the Honda dealership for service. They were convenient, I trusted the brand, and I figured they would know my car better than anyone. But when I called to schedule an appointment, they quoted me a diagnostic fee of $150 just to look at it, plus whatever the repair would cost. The service advisor also mentioned they were booking out 3 weeks. I started looking at alternatives. There was a third-party shop about 10 minutes from my apartment called Premier Auto Care. They had really high ratings online, like 4.8 stars with over 300 reviews. People raved about their honesty and fair pricing. They could get me in within 2 days and quoted a $50 diagnostic fee that would be waived if I had the repair done there. It seemed like a no-brainer. I dropped the car off on a Tuesday morning. The owner, Mike, seemed nice enough. He said they would take a look and call me by end of day with an assessment. Sure enough, he called me around 4 that afternoon. He said the noise was coming from worn control arm bushings and they would need to replace both front control arms. He quoted me $750 for parts and labor. That seemed reasonable based on what I had quickly Googled, so I told him to go ahead. I picked the car up the next day. Mike showed me the old control arms they had removed. They did look worn. I paid the $750 and drove home. The rattling was gone, so I figured the problem was fixed. About 2 weeks later, I was driving on the highway when I felt this really unsettling wobble in the steering wheel at higher speeds. It was not there before the repair. Something felt off. I called Premier Auto Care and explained the issue. Mike said to bring it back in and they would take a look for free since the work was just done. I took it back that Friday. Mike called me a few hours later and said the wheel bearing on the passenger side was failing and that is what was causing the wobble. He said it was unrelated to the control arm work and that these things just happen. He quoted me another $600 to replace the wheel bearing. I was skeptical. It seemed weird that a new problem would pop up so soon after the last repair. But I am not a mechanic, so what did I know? I authorized the work. Another $600. The wobble was better, but not completely gone. I started feeling like something was not right. I decided to get a second opinion. I took the car to a different shop, a place my co-worker recommended called Honest Auto. I explained the whole situation and what work had been done. The mechanic there, Tony, put the car up on the lift and started inspecting it. After about 20 minutes, he called me into the bay. He showed me the control arms that Premier Auto Care had supposedly replaced. He pointed out that the parts were clearly not OEM Honda parts and were not even the right spec for my model. The bushings were already showing wear and the mounting points were slightly off, which was causing stress on other components. Then he showed me the wheel bearing they had just replaced. It was not a Honda part either. It was some cheap aftermarket brand that Tony said was known for failing quickly. He said the wobble I was feeling was probably because the bearing was not seated properly or was already starting to fail because it was such low quality. Tony printed out the specs for the correct OEM parts and showed me photos of what Premier Auto Care had installed versus what should have been installed. It was obvious they had used the cheapest parts possible while charging me for quality work. I felt sick. I had just spent over $1,300 and my car was potentially in worse shape than when I brought it in. Tony said the mismatched control arms could cause premature wear on my suspension system, and the cheap wheel bearing was a safety issue. I asked Tony what I should do. He suggested I document everything, get a written assessment from his shop detailing the improper parts and installation, and then file a complaint with the Better Business Bureau and the State Attorney General's office. He also said I should absolutely not go back to Premier Auto Care for them to fix their own mistakes. I took his advice. Tony's shop wrote up a detailed report with photos showing the incorrect parts and explaining the safety concerns. I paid them for the inspection and the report. Then I sat down and wrote a very detailed, factual complaint to the BBB and the State Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division. I included all my receipts from Premier Auto Care, the report from Honest Auto, and photos of the parts. I also left a detailed review on every platform where Premier Auto Care was listed. Google, Yelp, Facebook, everywhere. I was not emotional or angry in the reviews. I just stated facts. What work was supposedly done, what I paid, what the independent inspection found, and the safety concerns. I included photos. The response from the BBB came first. They contacted Premier Auto Care on my behalf. Mike called me directly, sounding much less friendly than before. He claimed the parts they used were perfectly fine and that Honest Auto was just trying to upsell me. He offered to refund my diagnostic fee, $50, if I removed my negative reviews. I told him no. I wanted a full refund for both repairs since the work was done improperly with substandard parts. He got defensive and said that was not going to happen, that I had authorized the work and they had done it. That is when things got interesting. The State Attorney General's office opened an investigation. They contacted me for additional information and copies of all my documentation. About a month later, an investigator told me they had received multiple other complaints about Premier AutoCare following similar patterns. Unnecessary repairs, cheap parts marked up as OEM, and improper installations. They audited Premier AutoCare's records and found systematic fraud. Mike and his head mechanic had been deliberately using the cheapest possible aftermarket parts they could source while billing customers for OEM parts at dealer prices. They were also creating problems during repairs to guarantee customers would come back with more issues. The wheel bearing thing was a common tactic. Install a part that is likely to fail quickly, then charge for another repair when it does. Premier AutoCare got shut down. Mike lost his business license and faced criminal charges for fraud. The Attorney General's office helped me and several other victims file claims to recover our costs. I eventually got a full refund for both repairs, plus the cost of having Honest Auto properly fix everything. A few months later, the local news did a story about the investigation and used my case as an example. The story mentioned how one customer's detailed documentation and willingness to report the issue had led to the discovery of systematic fraud affecting dozens of people. My car is fine now. I had Honest Auto replace the control arms and wheel bearing with actual Honda OEM parts. It cost more than what Premier AutoCare had charged, but at least I know it is done right. Tony earned a lifetime customer in me. That's the end of that story. It's a good reminder that when something feels wrong, it probably is, and that high online ratings do not always tell the whole story. Do your research. Get second opinions, and do not be afraid to speak up when you have been wronged. Our next story takes place in a college classroom where grades became weapons. I was a junior at a state university, majoring in political science. I needed to take a required course called Constitutional Law and Civil Liberties. Only one professor taught it, Dr. Patricia Hendricks. She had been at the university for over 20 years and had a reputation for being tough but fair, or so I thought going into the semester. From the first week, I could tell Dr. Hendricks did not like me. I cannot point to one specific thing that made it obvious. It was more a combination of small things. When I asked questions in class, she would give curt, dismissive answers, while she was patient and encouraging with other students. When I participated in discussions, she would often cut me off or redirect to someone else. During our first exam review session, she made a comment about hoping some students were taking the material seriously while looking directly at me. I am a good student. I had a 3.7 GPA at that point. I studied hard for that first exam, probably 15 hours over the course of the week before. I knew the material inside and out. When I got the exam back, I had received a C-. I was shocked. I went through every question. Multiple choice questions, where I had given correct answers according to the textbook, were marked wrong. Essay questions, where I had cited cases correctly and made sound arguments, had vague criticisms like lacks depth or misses the point written in the margins. I made an appointment during Dr. Hendricks's office hours to discuss the exam. She barely looked at me when I walked in. I politely asked if she could help me understand where I went wrong so I could improve. She flipped through my exam, stopping at a few questions, and told me my analysis was superficial and that I clearly had not grasped the nuances of the constitutional principles we had covered. I pressed gently, asking for specific examples of what would have been a better answer. She got visibly annoyed and said she did not have time to provide private tutoring, and that if I was struggling with the material, perhaps I should consider whether I was ready for an upper-level course. I left that meeting feeling confused and honestly kind of humiliated. I studied even harder for the second exam. I went to the TA's review sessions. I formed a study group with 3 other students. I made detailed outlines of every case we had covered. I was confident going into that exam. I got a C. Again, multiple choice questions marked wrong that I knew were correct. Essay answers with vague, critical comments that did not actually explain what was insufficient. That is when I started to suspect something systematic was happening. I compared my exams with two people from my study group. We had given very similar answers on multiple questions. They got A's and B's. I got C's. The grading was not consistent. I decided to keep detailed records. I started saving everything. Every assignment, every exam, every rubric, every piece of feedback. I also started documenting classroom interactions. When Dr. Hendricks called on other students multiple times per class, but never called on me, even when my hand was raised, I noted it. When she praised other students' comments that were nearly identical to points I had made earlier, I noted it. For the midterm paper, I decided to do something calculated. The assignment was to analyze a Supreme Court case of our choosing and argue whether the decision was constitutionally sound. I wrote 2 papers. The first was my actual analysis, well researched and carefully argued. The second was nearly identical, but with a few deliberate minor flaws in the citations and a slightly weaker conclusion. I submitted the weaker paper. I figured if Dr. Hendricks was grading me fairly, it would score slightly lower than my best work, but still solidly in the B range. If she was grading me unfairly, it would get a bad grade, regardless of quality. I got a D+. Comments like poorly reasoned, insufficient engagement with precedent, lacks critical analysis. Meanwhile, I had a friend in the class who let me read her paper, which was honestly less thorough than mine, and she got an A-. I now had confirmation. The grading was not about the quality of my work, it was personal. But I needed more than just my suspicion. I needed proof that would be undeniable to university administration. I went to the Academic Success Center and asked for help understanding why I was struggling in this one class when I was doing well in all my others. The advisor looked at my exam and paper grades compared to my work from other courses. She was surprised by the discrepancy. She suggested I might have a case for a grade appeal, but said I would need concrete evidence of unfair grading. That is when I decided to create a systematic comparison. I spent weeks putting together a document that compared my exam answers to the answers of 3 other students who had agreed to share their work with me. I went question by question, showing where we had given the same or very similar answers, but received drastically different grades. For multiple choice, I showed questions where I had selected the correct answer according to the textbook, but was marked wrong. I also documented every classroom interaction. I had notes from every class period showing participation patterns. I showed that Dr. Hendricks called on me an average of 0.3 times per class, while calling on most other students between 2 and 4 times. I documented instances where she had praised other students for making points I had made minutes earlier. The final piece was the most important. I included both versions of my midterm paper, the one I submitted and the stronger version I had written but not turned in. I explained my methodology and showed that the submitted paper, while not my absolute best work, was still solid and should have received a far better grade based on the rubric. I took all of this documentation to the Dean of Students' office. I filed a formal complaint alleging discriminatory grading. I submitted my entire portfolio of evidence. I asked for a formal review of Dr. Hendricks' grading practices in my case, and potentially a broader investigation. The university took it seriously. They assigned an academic review committee to investigate my complaint. Dr. Hendricks was asked to provide her gradebook, her rubrics, and copies of all exams from the semester. She was also asked to explain her grading methodology. The investigation took about 6 weeks. During that time, I was still in her class, which was incredibly uncomfortable. She knew I had filed a complaint. She barely acknowledged my existence. I just kept showing up, taking notes, and documenting everything. The findings came back in my favor. The committee's report concluded that there was substantial evidence of inconsistent and potentially biased grading. They found that my answers on exams were frequently marked incorrect when they matched the textbook or established case law. They found that my paper grades were significantly lower than comparable work from other students with no clear rubric-based justification. They found that the pattern of classroom interactions suggested possible bias. The university offered me several remedies. They would remove the course from my transcript entirely, allowing me to retake it with a different instructor. They would also launch a formal review of Dr. Hendricks' teaching practices, including her grading across all her courses. I accepted the offer to retake the course, but I also asked what would happen to Dr. Hendricks. The dean could not give me specifics due to personnel privacy, but she said the matter was being taken seriously and that appropriate action would be taken. I found out later through campus gossip that the university's investigation had expanded after my complaint. Other students, both current and former, came forward with similar experiences. The pattern was clear. Dr. Hendricks had been systematically grading certain students unfairly for years, always students who were not part of her preferred group. She was put on administrative leave for the remainder of that semester. By the start of the next academic year, Dr. Hendricks was no longer at the university. It was framed as a retirement, but everyone knew she had been forced out. The university hired 2 new faculty members to cover her courses. I retook constitutional law the following semester with a different professor and got an A. That's the end of that story. The whole thing taught me that documentation is everything when you are dealing with institutional bias. If I had not kept meticulous records, it would have been my word against a tenured professor's, and I would have lost. But facts are hard to argue with. And finally, a story about discovering your face on someone else's advertisement. I work in sales for a software company. Decent job, decent pay, nothing too exciting. Last October, I was grabbing lunch with a couple of co-workers when one of them, Jake, started laughing at his phone. He turned it toward me and said, "Dude, why are you selling boner pills online?" I looked at his screen. It was an ad on some sketchy-looking website, and there was my face, not someone who looked like me, my actual face. It was a photo from my LinkedIn profile, cropped and edited to be on some fake doctor in a white coat. The ad was for a male enhancement supplement called Alpha Drive Max. The fake doctor, using my face, was apparently recommending this product as a physician. I felt my stomach drop, my face, my actual face. On an ad for fake medical products, implying I was endorsing them. Jake thought it was hilarious. My other co-worker, Sarah, looked horrified. I pulled out my phone and searched for the product. The ad was everywhere. Different websites, different formats, but same concept. My face photoshopped onto fake medical professional bodies, recommending this garbage. I immediately thought about who would see this. My clients, my boss, my family. Anyone who Googled my name might come across this ad. It was humiliating. I spent the rest of lunch trying to figure out what to do. When I got back to the office, I did more research. Alpha Drive Max was made by some company with a sketchy website registered to an address that was just a P.O. box in Nevada. There was no real contact information, just a generic contact form. The website was full of fake testimonials and pseudoscience. These people were selling snake oil and using my face to do it. I filled out the contact form, explaining that they were using my image without permission and demanding they remove it immediately. I included my phone number and email. I never got a response. I tried reverse image searching the ads to find all the places they were appearing. They were on dozens of websites, mostly those spam-filled clickbait sites and shady forums. I started filing complaints with each website, asking them to remove the ads. Most of them never responded. A few sent automated replies, saying they would look into it. The ads kept running. I started getting texts from people I knew. An old college friend sent me a screenshot asking if I had become a doctor. A distant cousin posted on Facebook asking if I was doing medical consulting now. It was mortifying. I had to explain over and over that my image was stolen and used without my permission. I decided I needed legal help. I found an intellectual property attorney who offered a free consultation. She listened to my situation and said I had a clear case for misappropriation of likeness and right of publicity violation. She could send cease and desist letters to the company and potentially file a lawsuit for damages. Her retainer was $3,000. I did not have $3,000 to spend on a lawyer for something that might not even be successful. The company was probably operating out of the country or through shell corporations that would be hard to pursue. I needed a different strategy. I started documenting everything. I took screenshots of every ad I could find with dates and URLs. I saved copies of the websites. I documented every attempt I made to contact the company and every complaint I filed. I created a detailed timeline of when I first discovered the ads and how they spread. Then I got creative. I posted about the situation on LinkedIn. I explained that my professional headshot had been stolen and used for fraudulent advertising without my permission. I included screenshots of the ads. I tagged Alpha Drive Max's social media accounts. I asked my network to report the ads wherever they saw them and to share my post. The response was huge. People were outraged. My post got shared hundreds of times. Colleagues, clients, and complete strangers started commenting in support. People started flooding Alpha Drive Max's social media with complaints. They started leaving one-star reviews on any platform where the company had a presence. A few days later, a reporter from a local tech news website reached out. They wanted to do a story about how companies were stealing people's images for fake medical endorsements. I agreed to be interviewed. The article went live a week later, with my story as the main example. That article got picked up by a few other outlets. Suddenly, this was not just my problem. It was a story about digital image theft and fraudulent advertising. Other people came forward saying their images had been used the same way. It became a pattern. The pressure worked. About 3 weeks after my LinkedIn post went viral, the ads stopped appearing. I kept monitoring for a few more weeks, and they seemed to be completely gone. Alpha Drive Max's website went offline shortly after, but I was not satisfied with just getting the ads removed. I wanted some kind of accountability or compensation. I reached out to the Federal Trade Commission and filed a complaint about the fraudulent advertising and unauthorized use of my image. I also filed a complaint with the Internet Crime Complaint Center. A few months later, I got contacted by a lawyer working on a class action lawsuit against the company behind Alpha Drive Max and several other similar products. Apparently, my story had helped draw attention to a larger pattern of fraud. Dozens of people had their images stolen for fake endorsements. The company was incorporated in a way that made direct legal action difficult, but they were violating payment processor terms of service and advertising platform policies. The class action resulted in a settlement. I got $4,200 as compensation for the unauthorized use of my image. It was not a fortune, but it felt like justice. More importantly, the companies involved had their payment processing accounts terminated, which effectively killed their ability to operate. I also learned a valuable lesson about protecting my online presence. I now watermark any professional photos I post publicly. I set up Google Alerts for my name and image searches. I check regularly to make sure my likeness is not being used anywhere I have not authorized. The weirdest part of the whole thing was how many people still remember me as the boner pill guy. Jake still brings it up at work events. I have learned to laugh about it now, but for a while it was genuinely distressing to have my professional reputation tied to something so ridiculous and beyond my control. The experience also connected me with other people who had gone through similar things. There is a whole community of people whose faces have been stolen for scam ads. We share strategies for getting ads taken down and for protecting ourselves. It is a bizarre club to be part of, but at least we can help each other navigate it. Looking back, I am glad I did not just accept it and move on. Fighting back, even when it seemed pointless at first, led to actual consequences for the people who did this. And going public with the story helped other victims realize they were not alone and that they could fight back too. That's the end of that story. It's a reminder that your digital presence is never fully under your control, and that sometimes the best way to fight back against faceless corporations is to make your story public and let collective outrage do the heavy lifting. Thanks for watching all the way to the end, and I hope you enjoyed these. Please subscribe for more, and I'll catch you tomorrow for even more stories. Take care.